What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Thomas, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take. I just wrapped up my second edition of 32 picks in 32 days. Second overall, the San Francisco 49ers will select. Tune in to find out. I'm going to make you guys listen. First pick, I got the Cleveland Browns. I already finished that one. Did Cleveland, did San Fran. Tomorrow I will be doing the Chicago Bears. I'm sorry. The Chicago Bears will be selecting with the third overall pick in the 2017 draft. Tune into that one March 2nd tomorrow. I'm excited for that one as well. I'm excited for this whole segment throughout this month, doing this segment up until the draft. It'll be a lot of fun. So, the next segment of the Thomas Take, the four-part show of today, I did the Biz Bang versus GSP stuff as well. For MMA fans, I gave my take on that fight. Also, the San Francisco 49ers, second overall, who I think they should go after. They do have some options, and I listed those, but ultimately I had them going in one direction. So, that being said, now it is time to answer a question from the Thomas Take Mailbag. And that was from one Samuel White. Samuel White, a awesome dude. One of my favorite dudes to talk sports with, no doubt about it. He's got a very interesting take on a lot of different topics. I plan on having him on the show one day because he's enjoyable to talk to about the Bills especially. And I also got a question that was just submitted by Eric Van Wyck today at 1:53 a.m. He was up late. So Eric, I'll answer your question as well. Samuel White asked me, he said, Thomas Take, I'm not huge on taking quarterbacks in the first round, especially since we may have options in Tyrod or free agency. I would love to see them take that big wide receiver, Mike Wallace, I think he meant Mike Williams, or Corey Davis in the first round. But is there a good second or even third quarterback option that looks like they may have a plus side? All right, I'm excited to answer this question, Samuel. I've given this a lot of thought in the process of looking at all the quarterbacks. And in the last part of the Thomas Take, I talked about the fact that I don't think there's a quarterback in this draft that I would take in the first round outside of Mitch Trubisky. And even Mitch Trubisky is a bit of a stretch for me. So, that being said, the Bills go, Mike Williams at Clemson. If they take the Clemson wideout, which is a possibility, a distinct possibility, very realistic, who do I think that they could go after quarterback-wise? There are two guys that come to mind. Both are, let's just say, interesting prospects. If you have not checked out Mahomes, the quarterback from Texas Tech, he is a guy that is 6'3", 220, reminds me of a bigger Dak Prescott. I've watched tape on him. He plays like a Russell Wilson, but bigger. He's mobile. He's accurate. He can throw very well on the run. I like what I saw from him. He's very athletic. He's a guy that would be kind of in the same mold as a Tyrod Taylor, and a guy that wouldn't offer too many, changes to the Buffalo Bills offense. If they were to part ways with Tyrod Taylor, that would be the guy that they would go after. It's actually Austin Mahomes. But it's definitely an interesting topic of discussion. You have another guy out there by the name of Chad Kelly that has been somebody that has been consistently linked to Buffalo over the course of the last few years, obviously due to his ties to Buffalo, being a Kelly, being a guy, and it's Patrick Mahomes. I'm saying Austin Mahomes, the pop singer. Oh, my God. But he's the FBS leader, 5,052 yards. He's a guy that has put Texas Tech on the map even more than they already were in the days of Michael Crabtree. And Mahomes is skipping his senior season to declare for the NFL draft. So he's definitely a guy that should be high on teams' lists. The scouting combine is a point in which players have the ability to really raise their draft stock over the course of the next, couple, months from now up until April 27th. And he could be that guy. He could be that guy that really raises his draft stock. 5,000 passing yards. As far as how he would translate to the NFL, it would be very interesting. I think that we're going to start to hear more about him as the draft comes to its head. And he could be better than Mitch Trubisky, who I think will actually be taken higher than him. I think he is better than Mitch Trubisky, and he'll probably be available in the second or third round. But you also have Chad Kelly, who has the discipline issues. He could be available in the fourth or fifth round. You also have Cardale Jones that they selected in the fourth round. I watched Sean McDermott's press conference today at the Scouting Combine, and when he was asked about Tyrod, he seemed to be talking about Cardale Jones more than Tyrod. They are enamored with Cardale Jones, and for good reason. He's got a cannon for an arm. He wasn't nicknamed 12 gauge for nothing. And he's a guy that apparently, in midst of training camp and practicing, he looked like he was ready to be the backup ahead of EJ, which isn't really a shock, not to knock EJ, but we know what the situation is with EJ. There was, talk of him, being put in when Tyrod was struggling towards the second half, towards the end of the season. It happened in Week 17. He didn't really play that well, but, maybe that's a direction that they'll go in. That's probably the most realistic direction that they would go in, one that's already on their roster, being that they already have Cardale Jones. They only invested a fourth-round pick in him, and his intangibles are off the charts. He's mobile. He can throw on the run. He's got a beautiful deep ball. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can fire the ball in tight spaces. We saw that in the preseason action where he played against Detroit, I believe. So we know what he can do to a degree, but he hasn't played against that the top competition, and when he did, he didn't really look that good. Now, on to Chad Kelly. I touched on him, and then I started talking about Patrick Mahomes. Back again. As far as Chad Kelly goes, and I've talked with MFST founder Dan Schalk about Chad Kelly extensively, Dan thinks that Chad is more Ryan Leaf than, a Chad Pennington. And I think he could be like a Chad Pennington in the NFL. Not a great quarterback, but a decent quarterback. He's got arm strength. He can throw a beautiful deep ball. He can throw on the run. It's not about his intangibles. It's not about his skill set. It's more about his off-the-field temper. Or his on-the-field temper, you could say, as well. So, that being said, will a team take a chance on him? If I'm an NFL head coach and I need to know who's the future of my franchise, I might not take a chance on a guy that has character issues because of the fact that I might have to babysit him. I don't want to have to babysit a grown man. I want to bring in a young gentleman that wants to help this team. And the one guy that I think of in recent memory that exhibited those qualities for a team was Carson Wentz. When the Philadelphia Eagles went out and they made that trade, they traded up to the second overall pick. They met with Carson Wentz in North Dakota or South Dakota, wherever he was from. I can't remember. I think it was North Dakota or maybe South Dakota. I can't remember. But when they met with him at this small town diner. And the scouts and the coaches said that he was a gentleman. He was very friendly to the waitresses and waiters, and he talked to all of the people in the town. They all knew who he was. He gave everybody their time. He was very polite, just a stand-up guy. And that was what made them decide to take him. Not necessarily his athletic ability, which I'm sure that helped, but it's about who the guy is as a person. If you're going to have this guy be the face of your franchise, you have to meet with him. You have to sit with him. You have to sit hours upon hours with the kid. Learn every single thing about him, good and bad, before you decide to take him to make him the brand of your organization, which Carson Wentz now is the brand of the Philadelphia Eagles. He is the face of the team. So, that being the case, that is what a team has to do with Chad Kelly. They have to meet with him. They have to sit down with him. They have to find out what makes him tick. Why is he this way? Why does he have the temper? Why did he run out onto the field to protect his brother? What was it that made him make those rash decisions in his career at Clemson to say the things that he said? Was it a bad time in his life? There's always a reason for something. Or does he have mental problems? If he has some sort of a mental problem, he needs to get the help he deserves to get, just as anyone else would. And it needs to be a situation where you need to put the right people around him. You need to know who to put around him. If you're going to take a chance on him, if you're going to draft him in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round, which is where I think he's going to go, you have to put him around positive coaches that will bring out the best in him as a player, obviously, but more importantly, as a person. And I think that he can be that guy. He's a guy that knows what's at stake. This is the NFL. This isn't the NCAA. The NCAA can throw a sanction on your program. They can do a lot of things. They're a very powerful organization. But the NFL will bury you. You can ask Ray Rice. You can ask Johnny Manziel. You can ask Greg Hardy, albeit all deservedly so circumstances, but second chances come in spades. Guys do their time, they get a second chance. For an example, Mike Vick. But guys that, continue to throw opportunity away, time and time again down the toilet, will be buried. And that is what happened to guys like Ray Rice and Johnny Manziel and guys like Ryan Leaf and guys like Jamarcus Russell, guys that threw away their opportunities, knowingly so, knowing that they were doing it. Those guys don't get opportunities again. And Chad Kelly needs to look at that as an example for himself and realize that he could very well go to the Buffalo Bills. If these character questions were not real, if this wasn't a character question, Chad Kelly would be a 1st or 2nd round pick. If Chad Kelly didn't tear his ACL, we'll say he'd be a 1st round pick. Being that he tore his ACL and he's not competing at the combine, he'll probably be a 4th or 5th round pick, maybe even a 6th round pick. So these things change the complete dynamic of a player. Just those 3 things. He tears his knee. He's not invited to the combine for reasons that we still don't know why, which I think was ridiculous. If you're not going to invite a player to the combine, you're literally stapling his mouth shut. And that doesn't do him any good. He should have the right, he should have the chance to speak in front of the media and explain himself, even so much as apologizing, just to brush up his image a little bit. They've given that chance to other players. Why not him? Maybe there's more of a reason to it that I don't know, that we don't know. But that would be the case if it were me. If I was in the shoes of the combine, I would have given him the opportunity to speak for himself. But again, we don't know what it was that he did. So hopefully, Samuel, that answers your question. I had another question from Eric Van Wyck. Eric Van Wyck asked me, who is the best Boston Red Sox player now that David Ortiz is gone? It obviously, the one guy that comes to my mind is Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts had an AL MVP season last year. I don't care if Mike Trout won it. Mike Trout did not deserve that AL MVP. Mookie Betts did. And I'm not saying that from a biased standpoint because I'm a Red Sox fan. Betts had better numbers. He had more doubles. He was more dominant over the course of the long haul of the season. He put his team in the playoffs. The Angels weren't even in the playoff race. They weren't even considered a contender. I think they finished with a below 500 record. Trout's great. He gets all the attention as it is. He's won AL MVPs. Give it to the guy that really hasn't won anything in his career, that burst onto the scene. Mookie Betts is by far the best Boston Red Sox player, and that says a lot because they are a loaded team. Betts, Bradley Jr., Benintendi, Andrew Benintendi, who will probably be the Rookie of the Year. It'll be a very interesting season for the Boston Red Sox. That was the Thomas Take Mailbag Part 2 episode, or actually Part 3 episode to today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in.